All right, thanks for coming back. Now we're ready to make our hinged panels, so let's jump right in and get that done. All right, we've got our 8 main panels built. Now what we need to do is build our hinge panels. So I'm going to take 8 pieces of the 30-inch long 1x2s I cut previously, and I've set a stop block, and I'm just going to trim these down to 29¼ inches. Okay, now we've got these 29¼ inch long strips, and we've got our 28 5/8 inch vertical members. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make 4 panels just using the same jig as before. The only difference is going to be they're a little bit narrower in width, and there's not a center support. We've got our first hinge panel done, and it will measure 29¼ inches by 30 inches in height. I'm going to need 4 of these, so I'm going to go ahead and knock the other 3 together. I'm going to stack these up and let them dry for a little bit because we've got some more work to do on these panels. All right, now if you followed the cut list and are making the same number of panels I'm making, you should have a dozen pieces of 1x2 30 inches long that are left from the previous step. Now what we need to do now is we need to rip this exactly in half. And these are going to be the tenons on either side of the panels we built a few minutes ago. Now to rip this, I'm going to do this on the bandsaw. There's just it's kind of a crummy little wood with a lot of internal tensions. It's small, and I just feel safer doing this at the bandsaw. And it's going to be fine. I've got a wood slicer blade in here. I've got the fence set at what I think is the middle. And now I'll show you a quick way to make sure we're dead center in the middle. Let's just zoom in on this cut. Okay, so to double check that we're in dead center, what we're going to do is we're going to turn the saw on, and we're just going to make a real, maybe 1/8 of an inch cut, and then we're going to flip this over, and we're going to make another cut and make sure that the blade is falling into the exact same kerf line. That's within a hair, but I think we can make a little bit of an adjustment and do just a little bit better. Okay, that looks perfect. All right, I've taken the jig that we used to get our corner square, and I've removed that top piece of plywood, and now I've turned it around and attached a 3/8 inch thick piece of wood. Now, the 3/8 inch dimension, height-wise here, is really important, and here's why. What we're going to do is we're going to take each of our panels that we've made, we're going to set it down next to that 3/8 inch piece, and we're going to take our tenon, lay it on top of that 3/8 inch piece, and nail it into place. And what that will do is it'll assure that the tenon gets placed dead center in the middle of this panel piece. And what we want to do here is we want to attach the saw kerf side of this tenon piece, because where we cut this 1x2 in half, that actually is going to be the straightest edge that we have. So I just want to line up this end here, press it in, and tack it in place. And there we go. All right, the last thing we need to do with this little jig is to make our hinge attachment pieces. And the way we're going to do that is exactly the same way. We're going to use the sawn side of one of these ripped 1x2s, and we're just going to attach it to another 30-inch long 1x2. The only difference here is I think I might put a little bit more glue on here, since the hinge will put a little bit of stress on this connection. So we just line this up and tack it together. And there we go. All right, just going to do a couple of details before we move to the next phase of the project. We want to use these 14 by 25 by 1 inch filters, quite inexpensive, to provide a little air circulation in our enclosure. So I'm just going to set this here and mark the cut location for a cross piece to hold this in. And we'll just snug this right up to the filter and tack it into place. And there we go. All right, we've got our frame assemblies glued up and drying. And what we've done is we've made the basic frame, and then we've attached 2 tenons to either side. And these, of course, were 1x2s that were ripped in half. Now what we need to do is turn our attention back to the legs, and we need to cut some grooves or dados to accommodate these tenons. And the system will go together just like this. And that's what'll hold everything upright. So I've already cut a couple of leg assemblies. And what you need is a dado set up the width of this tenon and the depth of this tenon, so that when everything is assembled, it will be nice and flush right here. And we're going to need 8 of these legs with the grooves cut at right angles. Those are corner legs. And then we're going to need 2 what I call line legs, which are dados cut in opposite sides to sit in the middle between 2 panels. And that will achieve the configuration that I've drawn up for my shop. Now, you may want to build a bigger configuration or a different configuration. Just keep that in mind. It'll change the number of legs and perhaps how you cut those. So let's just go about cutting the rest of these dados. Now, just for safety, when you're cutting these right angle dados, make sure that the cut side is facing out, just in case you were to hit a knot or something and this wanted to try to fly free. I think you're okay, but better to be safe. And there we go. Well, I love any project in my shop that will help me productively use up scraps. I've got a bunch of this 1/2-inch plywood left over from another project, so I'm ripping it to 4 inches wide, and then I'm using that to cut these little triangles. These are going to be gussets in the corners of the frames. Now, we may not use these on every frame, but we're certainly going to put them on the hinge panel frames and maybe in a few other strategic locations. You could cut these and put them in every corner if you want to. So up to this point, it hasn't really mattered on these panels what was up, down, inside, or outside. But now it's going to start to matter. and that's because we're going to put the plastic covering over one side of the panel. The plastic will be on the outside. That's so that the dust will shed off easily and it'll be easy to clean up if dust does fall on it. Now what I'm doing is I'm just flipping these around to try to figure out which is the smoothest side of the wood, and that's only so I don't have any splinters or anything that will rip the plastic. Now this is 6 mil plastic, and it's sold in a roll that's 10 feet wide by 20 feet long. And to make it a little bit easier to handle, what I like to do is just kind of roll off a little extra here and then just cut so that I have a 10-foot section by a little over the width of the panel. And it's just a little less messy to fool with. Now we can unfold this. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to just staple this on. We want to get it pretty tight, but you know what? We're not trying to get it so tight that we warp the frame. I'm using just a plain old staple gun here. I've got 3/8 inch staples in here, and this should hold it just fine. Just want to try to get the staples kind of in the middle of the piece of wood, and then we'll just stretch it out. Now, what we want to do is we want to take a very sharp knife and just trim along the edge here to trim off the excess plastic. Okay, so after trimming off the plastic, the last thing that we want to do is we want to attach our little corner blocks here, and all I'm doing is just making sure that this doesn't extend over the edge in any way. These little gussets are going to add a lot of strength. Now, these are 1-inch 18 gauge nails, by the way. And you may be wondering why I'm putting these on the side with the plastic. And you clearly could put them on the other side. The thing is, though, I want to be able to stack these panels up for storage. And by putting the gussets on the plastic side on every one, I will achieve some separation of the panel that lays on top of this from the plastic. Hopefully it'll make it less likely that I'll punch a hole in the plastic at some point in time. You know, things happen. All right, as I continued to look at the hinge panels, I decided that I really needed another cross brace in here, and I had some extra wood left over, so I've cut some pieces now to go in here. The one thing I want to be careful of here is to make sure that it fits down here at the joint, because it could flex up here, and that would cause a problem with the hinges. So I want to fit it down here, then move it up here. I've cut a couple of spacers here to get it level. And this brace is going to run horizontally across the hinge panel. And the reason for that is it'll give a little extra bracing on the hinge side of the panel. So we're just going to nail that into place, and then we'll cover this just like we've covered the others. All right, a couple of notes on the hinge panels. We already have a difference in the fact that we have a member that's running horizontally instead of vertically. Also, we're going to put the gussets on the inside, on the side opposite the plastic on the hinge panels. Now, there are 4 hinge panels. So what you need to do now is take 2 of those hinge panels and just designate those as left-hand panels. Then pick a side that's going to be the hinge side of those 2 panels, and put your gussets on the hinge side on those 2 panels. Now I've got some scrap plywood here. It's just 1/2 inch plywood, 4 3/4 inches wide. I've cut it to 30 inches long, and then I've overlapped it over the edge 2 3/4 inches. And just use a square to get that set up, get it perfectly square on both ends, flush with the top and bottom, and just nail it into place. And this will substitute for the gusset on this side, and it will form a stop for when you set this system up with double doors. All right, with the panel construction essentially complete, now all we need to do is put the hinges on the hinge panel. And the easiest way to do that is to just go ahead and mock up the assembly of one of the basic units. This, of course, is our filter holding unit. Let's do it this way. I'll put one corner unit on here. Our hinge panel will go in here, and this is our hinge post, which will insert in this dado. And now we can square the unit up, double check to make sure everything is square, and then with this unit here lined up and in place, we can attach the hinge right here. Well, we've run out of time in this video, but be sure to come back for part 3, the final installment of this series, and we'll finish putting on the hinges. We'll make the base, we'll make the top. We're going to make a tricky little jig that's going to help us get everything lined up so it can be assembled in any variety of configurations. And we'll put those configurations together so that you can see how this can be used with your projects in your shop. Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.